So imagine looking at like the absolute worst moment of your entire life.
Oh, man. Yeah, the one you just want to completely erase from memory.
Exactly. Like maybe it was the day you were fired from a job you thought you desperately needed,
Yeah.
or, the day you literally went hungry,
Right.
or even the day some massive life-changing opportunity was just totally stolen right out of your hands.
Yeah, and you're just sitting there in that exact moment feeling like the universe is just entirely, totally unfair.
Totally. But then, fast forward 10, maybe 20 years. Have you ever had that realization where you look back and think, wow, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a single thing about that disaster?
Which sounds crazy, but yeah.
Because it was actually the absolute best thing that ever happened to you.
I mean, it is one of the most profound and frankly completely counterintuitive shifts in human perspective.
Well, for sure.
We spend like so much of our daily energy just trying to avoid roadblocks,
Yeah.
building our entire lives around mitigating risk.
Yeah, just staying safe.
Exactly. But hindsight so often reveals that those roadblocks were never actually blocking the path at all.
Right.
They were just the forced detours we actually required to find the real paved road to where we needed to be.
Well, welcome to this deep dive into the source material, where we are exploring, well, the psychology of radical reframing.
Yes, and it is a fascinating concept.
It really is. We're looking at the idea that misfortune isn't just, an obstacle to overcome, but the actual literal starting point of life's greatest turning points.
And our source for this exploration is just an incredibly unique document.
Super unique.
It's a deeply personal, really transparent essay titled Misfortune is the Starting Point of Turning Points on the Journey of Life.
Written back in January 2022, right?
Yep, by Su Feng, who serves as a guide in a group called Lifechanyuan.
Right, which the text describes as this philosophical and spiritual living community.
Exactly.
And our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the psychological nuggets of wisdom from this author's life.
Right, to really dig into those experiences.
Yeah, we want to test that ancient, almost paradoxical idea that good fortune lies within bad, and, like bad fortune, lurks within good.
Which is such a tricky concept to really grasp in the moment.
It is, and what I find so compelling about this text is just the sheer vulnerability of it. I mean, the author promises absolute transparency right out of the gate.
He really does hold nothing back.
No, he explicitly says there is no hypocrisy here, no schemes, no tactics. It's just a genuine expression of his true self, flawed actions and all.
Which is rare.
Super rare. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin to establish the baseline of how this author views the world?
Well, I think we have to start where his understanding of survival and gratitude was fundamentally forged.
Oh, the 1950s.
Right, that takes us back to the years 1958 and 1960. These were years of extreme, devastating hunger.
Yeah, he writes that he almost starved to death during this period.
Exactly. And, we aren't talking about a rough patch or like a bad day at the office.
Oh, definitely not.
We are talking about literal biological survival just hanging by a thread.
And this brings us to the first major instance of radical reframing in the text.
Right.
He says that because of that extreme misfortune, he now finds literally every meal he eats to be completely joyous.
Every single one.
Yeah. He actually specifies the sour taste of northern cuisine, the spicy taste of central food, the sweet taste of southern dishes.
All of it.
Chinese, Western, African. It literally doesn't matter. It is all universally delicious to him.
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychological mechanism.
So let's hear it.
Because this isn't just some motivational poster cliche about, being thankful for what you have.
Right, it's deeper than that.
Much deeper.
Yeah.
This is a permanent physiological rewiring of his reward system. In psychology, there is a concept called hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation, okay.
Yeah, it's the idea that humans quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events.
Like you get used to things.
Exactly. You buy a new car, you're thrilled for a month, and then it just becomes, well, your car. You complain about the traffic again.
Oh, wow. But he seems to have completely short-circuited that adaptation process.
He has, because when you have experienced the absolute precipice of starvation, the baseline of what constitutes a neutral state is permanently altered.
That makes total sense.
Right. The simple act of having enough food to fill a stomach is no longer processed by the brain as a biological given.
It's a luxury.
It is defined, quite literally, as an active state of true happiness. His misfortune built a permanent immunity to petty dissatisfaction.
It basically sets the floor for his joy incredibly low.
Yes,
Like, if he has food, he is ecstatic. Everything else is just a bonus.
exactly.
It's like having a smoke detector in your house that used to go off every single time you burn
I
toast.
love that analogy.
Starvation essentially recalibrated his internal alarm system. Now, unless the house is literally burning down to the ground, he is perfectly content.
Which is such a powerful place to operate from. We've seen how profound trauma can rewire a baseline for gratitude. But, what happens when the universe doesn't just deprive you of a basic need, but actively steals a rare opportunity right out of your hands?
Ah, yes. That brings us to 1980 and a really interesting story about stolen turns.
This one is so relatable.
It really is. So the author was a student at the Zhangjiakou Geological Technical School, specializing as a fitter.
Right.
During one semester, he's assigned to the auto repair workshop, and the master mechanic tells his two apprentices to take the author out to the school playground and let him practice driving the car.
Which is huge.
Huge. I mean, for a student in China in 1980, that is an incredibly rare and exciting opportunity.
An opportunity that is, unfortunately, immediately hijacked.
Literally. The older apprentice explains the controls and steps out, but then the younger apprentice just hogs the steering wheel.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he starts the car, drives around recklessly, and just never gives the author a turn.
Just takes it completely.
And to make matters worse, while this younger apprentice is driving like a total maniac, a bunch of students from the fitter and mechanic classes flood out onto the playground for physical education.
So the environment suddenly transforms.
Right.
It goes from a quiet practice space into a crowded, highly dangerous area.
Exactly. Now, I have to think about this from the perspective of sitting in that passenger seat.
Oh, you'd be fuming.
Totally. In that exact moment, that younger apprentice is just a deeply annoying, selfish person.
For sure.
He is stealing your turn. He is ruining your day. It's the equivalent of like someone stealing a cab you just hailed in the pouring rain.
Such a frustrating feeling.
But the author realizes later that this wasn't just an annoyance, it was salvation.
Yes. And it's all about the concept of evaluating counterfactuals.
Right, explain that a bit.
So a counterfactual is just our brain's way of imagining alternate realities, the what-ifs of our lives.
Like, what if I got that job?
Yeah,
What if I took that train?
exactly. But the problem is, humans suffer from a cognitive bias where we usually only imagine the positive counterfactual.
Oh, that's so true.
Right. We imagine the fun we missed out on. We rarely vividly imagine the disaster we avoided. But the author actively engages in a negative counterfactual here. He admits that if he had been behind the wheel, a complete novice driver suddenly surrounded by dozens of classmates on a playground, he very likely would have panicked.
He could have hit those students. I mean,
Yeah.
it could have been a catastrophic tragedy.
Exactly. The misfortune of being sidelined, of being aggressively denied what he wanted in that exact moment, literally saved him from a potential disaster.
That is wild to think about.
We spend so much time fuming at the younger apprentices in our lives,
Yeah.
The person who took the promotion, the person who grabbed the microphone.
Yeah.
We almost never stop to consider if they just grabbed the steering wheel of a car that we are about to crash.
Wow. How often are we saved by the deeply annoying person who steals our opportunity?
Probably more often than we realize.
It requires a massive amount of humility to recognize that our own desires, if actually fulfilled in that specific moment, might have been our undoing.
The invisible bullet dodged.
The invisible bullet dodged. I love that. And this realization about avoided disaster lays the groundwork for how he views his entire professional life.
It really becomes a theme for him.
It does, which moves us into a phase of his journey I like to think of as failing upward by failing downward.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Thanks. We shift from avoiding physical disaster on a playground to avoiding moral disaster in a career.
Right.
The author describes this fascinating, continuous pattern where he was repeatedly placed in positions of official leadership and power.
He clearly possessed the outward traits that bureaucratic systems look for in leaders.
He really did. He says he might have been born with the qualities to be an official. I mean, he was a class monitor almost all through schooling.
Right.
And then at just 18, he becomes the deputy secretary of a brigade managing 11 production teams.
Which is an incredible amount of responsibility for an 18-year-old.
Totally. And then in the 80s and 90s, it just keeps going.
Yeah.
He becomes the director of the third echelon in a geological hydrology team in 84, the principal of a geological bureau school in 88,
Wow.
and the director of a prospecting machinery factory in 1992.
Just climbing the ladder?
Right. It is a rapid, incredibly successful rise to power.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. He messed every single one of them up.
He essentially failed out of a highly successful trajectory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He admits he didn't take any of these official positions seriously. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
He looks back at this continuous string of professional failures, and he calls it a massive blessing.
Which is counter to everything we're taught.
Right. He actually quotes his wife, who told him in 1993 that if he hadn't messed up those early opportunities, he, quote, would have already been the governor of Gansu province.
Wow. Which sounds like the absolute ultimate success story.
It really does.
To many, yes. Ascending to that level of provincial governance would be the absolute pinnacle of a career. This raises an important question, though. Why does he celebrate his failure to reach that pinnacle?
Well, I have to admit, when I first read this, my immediate reaction was to push back a little.
Sure, naturally.
I thought, is he just rationalizing his own incompetence? Like, is this just a lazy employee saying, oh, I didn't want that big job anyway?
Sour grapes, basically.
Exactly. But his reasoning is shockingly self-aware. He says if he had become that powerful official, there is a 90% chance he would have become corrupt.
Which is a brutally honest self-assessment.
Totally brutal. He estimates he probably would have ended up in prison, or even if he avoided jail, his name would be infamous in history.
And this perfectly illustrates the psychological trap of success.
The trap of success.
Yeah. We are socially conditioned to equate career advancement with positive personal growth. We see a ladder, and we feel an irresistible urge to climb it.
Right, you just climb because it's there.
Exactly. But we rarely pause to check if the ladder is structurally sound or if it's leaning against a building we actually want to enter.
Well, that's good.
What the author is describing here is a form of subconscious self-sabotage that acted as a moral survival mechanism.
Subconscious self-sabotage as survival mechanism. That is wild.
It really is. If your core values are fundamentally misaligned with the requirements of a specific system in this case, a system he perceived as requiring corruption to survive at the highest levels, your brain will often generate friction to stop you from advancing.
Wow.
His inability to conform, his apathy toward these roles, was the exact mechanism that protected his integrity. Misfortune, meaning his failure to succeed as an official, prevented him from becoming someone he would ultimately despise.
It's like his subconscious was intentionally failing the test to save his soul.
Exactly.
Think about how universally we mourn the promotions we didn't get, or the business ventures that collapsed.
All the time.
But how many of us were actually just being protected from the deep moral compromises that specific success would have demanded?
We assume that achieving our goals is always a victory. But sometimes, succeeding in a corrupt or misaligned system is the most catastrophic failure possible.
That is such a profound point. Now, avoiding a bad outcome by quietly failing is one thing.
Right.
But sometimes, misfortune isn't just a quiet internal sabotage. Sometimes it's a violently irrational external force that shoves you completely out of a comfortable rut.
The transition from internal friction to an external breaking point.
Exactly.
The text shares a story from 1994 that captures this dynamic brilliantly.
Yeah, let's talk about the 1994 car repair incident.
Yeah?
So the author is abroad, working as a translator for an official.
Right.
And the official's car breaks down. Because the author is the translator, he's the one burdened with driving this broken-down vehicle over 200 kilometers to this place called Blavoy to get it fixed.
A massive hassle.
Huge. He finally gets to the repair shop, and the owner tells him it's going to take 3 days to source the parts and actually fix it.
Okay.
So making a completely rational decision, he leaves the car and returns to the base.
A completely standard, logical response to a logistical problem.
You would think so. But that evening, the official just unleashes on him, completely berates him.
Just loses it.
Yeah. The official irrationally demands that the car should have been fixed and brought back that exact same day, which was physically impossible.
So the author is faced with deeply unfair, irrational punishment.
Right. And he quits right there on the spot.
Wow. Good for him.
He says this unfortunate event, this completely unfair insult, was the final straw that led him to leave the system entirely.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human behavioral change, we have to talk about inertia.
Okay, inertia.
When we are comfortably situated inside a system, even a deeply flawed or mildly miserable one, the gravity of the status quo is incredibly strong.
Right. It's hard to leave.
Humans will tolerate a 3 out of 10 level of misery indefinitely simply because it is predictable.
We call it a comfortable rut.
Exactly. To break that inertia, to actually leave the comfortable rut, requires a massive injection of activation motivation energy.
Oh, I see.
The official's irrational insult wasn't just a bad day at work. It was the friction required to generate escape velocity.
Escape velocity.
It pushed the author's misery from a tolerable 3 to an intolerable 10, forcing him to act.
I really love that concept of escape velocity. And look where that escape velocity actually took him.
It's amazing.
He embraces self-reliance, starts his own business, and the result is an entirely different life. I mean, at a time when very few people in his environment had private cars, he ends up with a sedan and a van.
Right.
He's living in a spacious villa with a pool, employing 2 staff members to maintain his garden and do his laundry.
A massive shift.
And he attributes this entirely to the misfortune. He says, thanks to the irrational insults from that official, I finally found my path to freedom.
The insult was the mandatory catalyst. And the text provides an even more extreme macro-level example of the same dynamic later in his life.
Yes, and this is a really critical part of the narrative to explore. The author notes a massive structural disruption to his life's work here. According to the essay, the philosophical and spiritual living communities he helped establish, Lifechanyuan and the Second Home, were suppressed by the Chinese government, and over 10 of these communities were destroyed.
Right.
Now, obviously, regardless of the complex politics surrounding that event, and as always, we're just looking at the source text here, not taking any political stances. What's absolutely fascinating for our psychological deep dive is how he processed this ultimate structural misfortune.
Right, because it is the destruction of everything he had spent years building. The ultimate external shock.
Totally. But again, look at the result he describes in the text. This intense pressure, this total destruction of his environment, pushed the author to relocate to Canada.
Yes.
And his life there is described as a massive, unbelievable expansion of his personal freedom.
It sounds incredible.
He lives on 40,000 square meters of private land. He lives in a massive mansion with 10 bathrooms, 2 washrooms, and 6 showers, enjoying what he describes as a peaceful, harmonious, secure, heavenly life.
Without those severe, uncomfortable push factors, whether it's an angry, irrational boss in 1994 or the large-scale disruption of his entire community later on, he might never have achieved the vast level of physical and psychological freedom he currently experiences.
Right.
Misfortune, in these instances, acted as a mandatory eviction notice from a smaller life.
A mandatory eviction notice from a smaller life. Man, that is a brilliant way to frame it.
It really hits home.
When you get fired, or when a major project you built completely collapses, it feels like the walls are caving in.
Absolutely.
But it might just be the universe saying, you have outgrown this container, you are too big for this room now, and since you won't leave voluntarily, I am forcing you out.
Exactly. The old structure literally has to be dismantled, sometimes painfully, for the new, larger life to be built on the very same foundation.
So true. Now, we've been analyzing all these events in hindsight.
Right, looking back.
It's relatively easy for us, sitting here now, to connect the dots looking backward. You say, oh, that bad thing in 1980 led to this good thing later.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Exactly. But the essay also delves into how the author handles misfortune right now, in the present moment, without the benefit of a 20-year time lapse.
And this is where his philosophy transitions from a retrospective analysis to an active daily practice of radical acceptance.
And I have to say, his examples are intense.
Very.
Like over 20 years ago, he's in a car accident. Most of us would be severely traumatized or just so angry.
Of course.
But he says the accident changed his life's trajectory, leading him onto the path of the greatest creator, which, he defines as the higher power or universal ordering principle in his philosophy.
Right.
Then he faces physical loss. He literally loses sight in one eye.
Wow.
People around him are naturally worried and offering sympathy. And what does he do? He smiles. He literally declares, "Ha, from now on, I can see everything clearly with just one eye."
He completely refuses to categorize the event as a tragedy.
But wait, I have to push back here.
Okay, go ahead.
Because as a listener, this crosses a line for me. Laughing at losing your eyesight.
It sounds extreme.
It really does. And the source also notes that when a government video was released publicly calling his community evil, he laughed and felt delighted all day long.
Right.
He viewed it as darkness cursing the light, believing that being publicly attacked would only make his community shine more brilliantly in history.
Yes.
So is this actually healthy? Like delighting in public condemnation, laughing at partial blindness? It sounds dangerously close to psychological denial or toxic positivity. Is he just suppressing his natural human reactions?
I mean, it is a totally valid critique. And the distinction between toxic positivity and radical acceptance is incredibly thin, but it is crucial.
Okay, explain that.
So toxic positivity is a form of denial, right? It is forcing yourself to say, this is good when you were actually suffering.
Like slapping a smiley face sticker on a broken arm.
Exactly. But radical acceptance, which is what he is practicing, is not saying this is good. It is saying this is.
Whoa.
It is the total suspension of judgment regarding the present moment.
So it's about not wasting energy fighting a reality that has already occurred.
Precisely. He asks regarding his eye, who knows whether it is a good thing or a bad thing?
He just leaves it open.
Right. He has arrived at a profound psychological understanding. As long as you remain entirely calm, no panic, no complaining, no anger, you simply wait for the, as he beautifully puts it, clouds to disperse and flowers to bloom.
Wow.
He literally advises that when numerous unfortunate events occur, you should congratulate yourself.
Congratulate yourself for a disaster. I mean, it is completely backwards to how we are wired.
It is totally backwards, but it's logically consistent within his framework.
Right.
In his worldview, a severe misfortune is the undeniable, blaring signal that the gates of heaven, meaning a new, better, necessary path, have just been violently forced open for you.
Okay, I see.
If you truly believe that the destruction of the old is the required prerequisite for the creation of the new, then grief is replaced by curiosity.
Grief is replaced by curiosity. That's powerful. So what does this all mean for us?
Right, how do we use this?
If we synthesize the core philosophy from this deep dive into the source material, the journey of this author proves that we are, frankly, terrible judges of our own experiences in the present moment.
We really are. We lack the vantage point to see the whole puzzle.
Exactly. What feels like a world-ending disaster, a failed career, a stolen turn in a car, an unfair insult from a superior, the collapse of a community, or even losing an eye, is very often the exact, precise turning point required to unlock a better future.
The misfortune isn't in the way of the change.
No.
The misfortune is the mechanism of change.
I want you to think about this right now in your own life. Think about that annoying younger apprentice who stole the steering wheel when it was your turn.
Or think about the completely irrational boss who insulted you and made you quit in a rage.
Right. Looking back, what disaster did they save you from? What expansion of freedom were you forced to find because they made your previous smaller situation totally unbearable?
It demands a retroactive gratitude for our deepest, most painful frustrations.
It really does. Which brings me to one final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive.
Let's hear it.
If every single misfortune you've ever experienced was actually a required puzzle piece, placed perfectly by the universe to protect you from a worse fate or to force you onto a better path, what current bad thing in your life are you completely misjudging right now?
Oh, that's a great question.
If you were handed a crystal ball today and you could look into the alternate reality where you got exactly what you thought you wanted 5 years ago,
Yeah.
would you actually be terrified of the person you became?